Welcome to So Guided, a spiritual travel guide for the curious. Join Carissa and Jenny, ordinary people exploring all the extraordinary ways we can connect to the universe. Each week, they investigate another spiritual modality and adventure through all the wild ways we can find high vibes, hope, and ultimately, enlightenment.
Hello and welcome to another episode of So Guided. Today we're diving back into past life hypnosis. A couple weeks ago, Carissa shared her session with you right after she finished up, but she held back a major secret that made this session a lot more potent. I do have to share there's a trigger warning for sensitive material, but it's so worth hearing. It takes the whole regression to the next level. This and my own recounting of my own past life hypnosis. You've got questions? So do we. Let's do this.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We are back for round 3 of our past life regression podcast, the after my experience a couple days ago. I've had some time to reflect and to integrate some of the information. So we are going to do a little bit more sharing today and also talk to Jenny about her experience and kind of the nuggets that we've come up with since mine, which we talked about, I think, like 1 minute after I finished and some of the details. Right. So before we get started, Jenny, you want to jump in with a quick weekly woo-woo for us?
Sure. So you might have noticed we've mentioned a few times manifesting challenge. So we're both involved in the Gabby Bernstein manifestation challenge, which is 21 days to encourage you to manifest one thing. So that's something we're going to circle back to you, but it does bring up lots of things in our lives. So one of her prompts this week was to ask for a sign. And I had 2 different days where I did it because I didn't trust the first one. Okay. The first one was an owl because my manifestations are in regards to homes, multiple things I'm wishing for in regards to home. So owl has always related to home. So I really wanted an owl, whether it was a look. You know, you always think you need that tangible thing.
You think you need to see like an owl.
I want the owl. Anyway, so I was designing for someone a kid's room, and I went onto the art website, and all the art I kept finding was owl, 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 owl. And for me, I disregarded it because I was always going to look up animals in a kid's room. And so I disregarded it. But truly, all the art that was popping up was like a billion owls. So I actually negated it. Yeah. So pause on that because I have a second one, but do you feel like that could be my sign?
I know it was my sign.
Okay, thank you.
100%.
See, sometimes, guys, you just need a friend. We've read this before, that you're supposed to share your sign stories so it could help validate it and put it out in the world. Yeah. So this is helpful for me. I thought you'd say that, so thank you. I needed that. Yeah. And then the other one was, so I wrote down like a moon and a star. Okay. Because that's kind of specific. But in my mind's eye, the star was little and the moon was bigger. So I didn't get it in the way I thought, but at the end of the night of the day that I asked for it, I was on Facebook or Instagram, which I'm not on very often anymore, and a girl just had a baby, and she said my baby was born, and she had a moon sign, then a star, a moon emoji and a star emoji. And I was like, oh, is that it? Because it wasn't how I saw it.
I think if you see it and you question, is that it? It is it. Okay. Because otherwise you wouldn't have thought it. I think that's great. Okay. I think you got 2. Okay. And it's so funny. It's such a sign of your sign. You get 1,000 owls. Be like, that's not good enough. I'm going to do a different sign to see. And it's like we're always testing the poor universe. It's just trying to show us.
Universe. We're confusing it.
Yeah, we're always like begging for more. But that's how we are. So it's fine. But no, I would say both of those were signs.
Okay, I love it.
So that's great. Okay. On the right track. So my weekly woo-woo is in regard to my past life regression. Okay. So there was actually a big part of the past life regression that happened that I felt like very uncomfortable with, that I didn't share right after. And in actuality, I didn't share with the person, the therapist that was walking through. So it was just this really weird portion, and I was kind of questioning it, and it just seemed really like a little dark. So I didn't share, and I'm going to tell everyone like what this was, but it relates to this story. So the next day after I did the past life regression, I went to bed, I thought I was going to have dreams, nothing. Still kind of like nothing was really resonating as far as like, again, no big signs about it, no like dreams that were further opening like my mind to what I had seen. And there was this, like I said, this element that was kind of sticking out to me, but I hadn't shared, that I just felt weird about. So the therapist, his name is Simon Bown, and he has his own podcast called the Past Lives Podcast, so that he's all in on past lives. And what he normally does is interview people of all sorts, people who have had past lives, people who are, spiritual leaders, people who have had near-death experiences.
He does ghosts.
He does ghosts, yeah. He's super interesting. And he's like I said, that's why I picked him, because I was so drawn to him and his experiences and just how into this he is. So he's always interviewing people, and he has, like I said, he has hundreds of podcasts. And so, and I just got into it recently, so it's not like I've listened to that many of his. And so what I tend to do when I'm picking a podcast, I'm on my way to work, and I'll just scroll through quickly and then stop my thumb wherever, read the title, and if it appeals to me, I'll listen to that particular podcast.
Which is kind of divine.
I try to. I try to let the universe push me in the direction of what I'm supposed to listen to. So the next day I did that, went to his podcast, checked it out, scrolled, and it was his past life regression. So and it was like my past life regression. And it wasn't like a recent one. It was like from like a year or so ago. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see like how his went. Because again, I'm assuming when I was about to listen to his, it was going to be a very detailed, perfect, chronological order. And in actuality, it was very detailed. He was like very in it. Like he could see things. He knew what he was. Like he had so much detail. So it was, it was kind of what I expected it to be, except for one portion. So he jumped right in, and he had a therapist who was like a woman who, again, is very he knows her, very in the industry. And they played his past life regression of him being under the recording. And then they would stop and kind of talk about it. So the first life he went to, he was a woman. And he was.
I think it's funny when it's.
Yeah, it's cool. And he was like very into it, and he remembered it, and it seemed like he was in like the 1600s, and he knew the time, and he was in a rich family, and he was like basically bequeathed to get married to somebody. And it seemed like the theme, and he was kind of sharing the theme of that life, and all his past life regressions have been like rejection. And so in this, he had found somebody that he was in love with. As a woman, she was going to be married off to someone that she wasn't in love with, and she had talked to her father about it, but the father didn't care, and he was like an asset to his father at that time.
Right.
So he's telling about the woman brings him forward to what's the next important part of the life, and it was his wedding day. And so wedding day, and he says he'd actually feel the fabric of the dress, and one of the things he said, which I liked, was when they took a pause, was like, one of the things that validates past life regressions to him was the fact that as like a man, being able to feel the fabric and know that he felt beautiful and feel that validates to him. Like he would never think that cognizantly. So when he's under and he's like saying these things, it helps kind of validate it. So fast forward, he's on his wedding day. He says he gets in a fight with the person that he says was like an arrogant person he was being married to. He didn't want to. It was late. The guy that he was supposed to be marrying, again, he's a woman at the time, was a drunk or something. It was just, awful. He's having this really bad experience. And the therapist is like, well, what happens next? And he's like, I opened the window, and he's like, and I made sure that I jumped out head first. I know. And my jaw dropped, because in that past life, he had committed suicide.
Oh goodness.
Over this life. And he shared that. And it, a very sensitive topic, obviously. And my jaw dropped so much for, many reasons, but one of the bigger reasons was going back
Go for it.
to
Tell us.
my past life regression. As I shared, the big portion, the one that had gotten the most clearest was where I was a lady, it seemed like Hawaii or something. I'd had a baby. I'd had to put this baby off onto a boat. And Simon had asked me what had happened next. And I told him I was walking on the beach, and I was just very, very sad. And, he asked me again, take me to the next important part of your life, or take me to the next thing that you remember, what's the most next significant event. And I saw very clearly, but I did not share with him that in that life, I also took my own life. And it was so moving. I was crying within the regression, and it was so staggering also to see it, that I was just oh my God, that suicide it's a very sensitive topic, and it's such a hard thing. And I just didn't feel even comfortable sharing with him as the therapist that had happened in a past life. And so I kept it to myself. I was like, no, it's just going dark, when in full well, I remembered what was happening. One of the things that they say, and which I realized too, is when you're in this hypnosis, you know what's going on. Right. So it's not you're in a hypnosis and you're just saying everything. Yeah. You can edit what you share, even though you're in this deep state of hypnosis, even though you're in a deep state. And it, again, part of it seems, again, it feels foggy, it feels weird, but I was able to edit what I shared with him. So I didn't share it And the reason I bring it up as a weekly woo-woo is like when I heard his first story being something like that, I got like my jaw dropped. I got like full body chills because I felt like I was meant to hear it. And part of me was like a little bit not bummed because I feel like everything happens for a reason. But part of me wished I almost had shared it and felt more comfortable because I just felt like it was so taboo and something like I'm like, oh my God, I can't even like say this out loud. But to know that like he had actually said it and shared it. And again, it was also triggering for him and sensitive for him to share. But I just thought like, I was like, oh my God, like after hearing that, I wanted to share with everybody because that was such a big part of mine. And it was, upon reflection, it's something that I'm able to like take away and really, I feel like as I've thought about it, I've been able to take more from the experience and like kind of see what my soul was trying to tell me or why I was shown that light.
Totally. Well, I have a light thought and then a deeper question for you. My first light thing is that I love the way the universe works. So I don't know how to clarify enough to you guys that this podcast he has hundreds, and I also do what you do with the random picking.
Yeah.
And I actually think one of his really beautiful podcasting interview abilities is he does not insert himself into shows. And I have yet, after 6 months of listening to him, ever heard anything about his own experience or even his own regressing other people. He more often than not is interviewing people, talking about a book or someone else, and he's a lovely interviewer. And I've always liked that about him. I have not heard one that is either someone he regressed or himself.
Right.
So this is really interesting that and not a coincidence that you picked it, that it's his.
Right.
And second, not only is it his, but on the week of which you did it,
right.
The regression is the week that you heard a story that related to yours.
It was so meant to be.
It's very cool.
It was definitely no coincidence.
Okay.
It actually made me, I was like, oh my God, I have to talk to Jenny. And it made me also be like, I think I have to share it because I was even like hesitant to share that part of the regression on this because it is such a triggering, sensitive topic. And it really made me question like, wow, like, is that something that, and not to say it is normal, but like it's just like that. Do people see deaths like that in their regressions?
They do.
And I had actually wished, now that I heard him, I wish I had asked more questions and brought that up so I could have gotten a perspective that I wasn't able to get. But I still think it was like one of the craziest woo-woos that I heard that afterwards. And I think I shared this in the like right afterwards, but one of the messages that, he brought me into like afterwards, like I was still in the hypnosis, but after that life, he brought me to like my guides and he was like, what was the purpose? Like, why did they show you these lives?
Remind me what they said.
So for this particular life, it was to not let grief destroy you and that you have to live. Okay. And so it was like one of those, and like, so right then at the surface, like, obviously, like, when I heard that, like, talking to you a couple minutes later, and even in my own head, when I heard it right then, I automatically thought, like, of, like, the loss of, like, babies, and how I'm like, okay, well, this relates. I lost a baby there. I've lost a baby here. That, obviously, like, I need to, like, live and look at that as part of my story and whatever, but I can't let it destroy me. I still have to live. It was like, you still have to live and move forward was kind of the messaging I got. And so that was like my, initial immediate reaction, which was fine. But since then, and after hearing his podcast and just like kind of sleeping on it, my perception has kind of changed as to why I think I got that life.
This is super interesting because before you even say it, it's like we said that almost when we spoke right after, we had our own ego processing of your event. And we said, we actually had the hypothesis that things would resonate differently when we circled back. And it's true. It's almost like what you're about to explain is like your higher self got involved in what stuck.
Yes.
What stuck, what resonated, what integrated into your thoughts is this. So go ahead.
Well, and I think to add to that, like I think right afterwards I was very skeptical.
Yes,
of
you
it,
were.
and
your face was skeptical.
and I was like, and I think I mentioned this too. Like, you can't verify this. It's not like a psychic tells you something and you can verify it's accurate. Like, you can't verify this because it's your own self, your own higher self. So you just have to believe, and if you so choose to believe. And upon further thought and just letting it sit with me, and actually kind of putting my ego away and not having my ego. And like my mind jumped to conclusions of, you heard this because of this, you heard that because of this. Like, I think my mind wanted quick solutions, quick like connections, and like quick ways to just kind of like, this is why we saw this. Obviously, it makes sense. But upon as I kind of sat with it and even shared with my husband, kind of more came to me. And what I actually thought about is he had a very big questionnaire when I first started about like, what do you want to focus on? Like where do you have like issues in your life? And I was like, I just want to know like something. I just want to know like what do they want to show me? I have no, I don't have any particular pain. I said like, there's nothing like truly like traumatic I'm trying to overcome that I'm aware of. I think I'm like a human who has like grief and challenges, but nothing that's like really like was sticking out in me. However, if like you take a step back and you look at like what I talk about in therapy and what I do talk about, and I'm a very big worrier. In my like entire life, I've been very, very worried about like losing somebody. When I was little, it was about losing my parents. When it was like now it's like I'm so afraid something's gonna happen to somebody I love, and it's like it can almost be paralyzing at times. And it's like it's just something that I live with and I deal with, but it's definitely an anxiety that I have. I think very much more so than like most people. It's definitely something.
An example of it is you've called me when the kids were on a field trip and you just couldn't handle them being on a bus without seatbelts for 30 minutes.
Well, let's embarrass me and tell everyone. No, I was kidding.
However, I agreed that I also am on edge when they're on long trips on the bus.
Right.
But just as like a very light example, you go to a morbid place, if you will.
I do.
And so it is true. You have a higher level of anxiety.
I have a very high level.
In particular to this subject. In life, you don't. You're super fun and like playful and awesome. But like there is an underlying current of like,
Yes. Well, there 100% is. And with that, I feel like I try to control every situation to try to keep my worry at bay. And so I want to be the one to pick up my kids. I want to be the one to do this. Like I want to have so I do a lot of that. And one of the messages that came up is like, what are you on this life to do? And it was to surrender and let go of control, because you're not going to be able to stop all that. So, and even in this, it was like the message about this particular life I'm in is to like let go of control. But I'm like going around in a big circle.
No, you're not.
To get
I have
back.
goosebumps.
To get back to when I thought about like the living in grief and like you gotta like continue to live. It became less about a very automatic reaction, like I lost a baby there. I've lost a baby here. Like it's the same. Like that's why they're showing it to me. And it actually became more about, I think the reason I am so worried and like I do have that in this life is, again, this is how I'm gonna go with, is that in that life I didn't survive.
Yes.
So like I think that it's like almost like, as much as I want to protect my kids, I'm also trying to protect myself in this life with control, because when that happened, then I didn't recover. I did not where it's like you have to live. In that life I chose not to live because it was too overwhelming, and I honestly don't fault myself for it, and I still don't know if I would survive if in this life. I don't know, but I feel like it was a reminder of like you can't control things, and like that is a reason, or it could be why I was shown that, to remind myself that is why I have this underlying current, and that this life I need to just try to let go and just surrender into whatever it is, which is much easier said than done.
Much easier said than done.
For me.
I got the goosebumps while you were talking, and I just feel like what an awesome nugget, knowledge bomb to come out of it as something to work through. Yeah. And to like, the clarity of it is so clear and clean this morning while we're talking. Like I see you with a resolve. You almost look like bewildered, confused, and dazed when I saw you after it. And like you look clear, like your eyes are clear. I don't know how to explain it. Like I have a funny question. I would venture I already know the answer. Is like it almost makes me want to piece together the spiritual answer you got from a strange source, which is regression. It's not a conservative, traditional way to get knowledge about ourselves and our psyche. If you were to be brave enough to bring it to your therapist who works with you normally in normal day stuff. Yeah. If you could ever say what you're working through, I wonder how beautiful that therapy could be if you bridge the gap, because you're not talking to Simon again per se. And we might schedule, you said you might schedule it again, which I think you should, especially because you didn't share it. But second, like, what if you had the bravery to tell your therapist this story and you can like integrate it into your right now therapy? I don't know. It's wild because I don't know that I could ever admit it. I'm just asking you if you'd even consider it, because
I have a dumbfounded look. So my clear look has been replaced by dumbfounded with that question. I don't think I'd be afraid to share it. I think I could totally, I'm sharing it on a podcast. Like I could tell my therapist, obviously I'm not afraid to share it. So that wouldn't be the problem. But I don't know if I think I'm always like, when I do share or when I like, especially with therapy, like, even that, I'm always like kind of like, you're kind of thinking about like when you share things, like what's the purpose and is it going to help? I don't know if I would see value in it.
Okay.
Maybe, and I do like my therapist. I don't see her very much anymore. She's very busy. So I probably don't go often enough. So I don't know if I'd take like the once every 3 month session to like use it. I don't know. I would definitely, like I said, maybe I'll tell her to listen to the podcast and then figure out if she's
and come back.
And then see if she has any follow-up that she wants to share with me.
All right. So last one on this is, are you glad you did it? Did you feel like this was productive for you?
I do. I did like it. It's a very different experience than anything I've done before.
Yes.
And I think that after doing it, I would have different expectations going in. And I do feel like mine wasn't one that I'd necessarily play. Like Simon's, when he played his, was like you could literally like see and hear and feel everything he was going through. Mine was like not as clear. But I would do it again, and I think I would be more open to just sharing and seeing. Right. One thing I didn't do, which I wish I had, and I don't even know if he was offering this, and I just was like kind of in a daze, but like I do want the afterwards some thought process, or like I wish I had been like, hey, how do you think that went? Or like, hey, what do you do next? And I think the difference is he's like a hypnotherapist. So he's like trained in this. He's not a psychic. He's very much like a therapist regressing someone back and letting you come up with your own thoughts, decisions, like feelings, kind of, you're the one, your higher self is the one that's like integrating this information. I think what's different with you, and I think this may be something I would consider too, is when you did yours, you went to somebody who is actually like a psychic and a medium who does past life regressions. Right. And I feel like
very different angle.
Totally. And I think she, and you can talk a little bit about yours if you want, like afterwards she kind of gave you her thoughts, which I don't know if you like or don't like, but I feel like that's a different way. And I might try something like that, or maybe, I don't know. I feel like that's different, a different approach.
Right. I think we'll always want afterthoughts. Like we did that. We did the Reiki healing in a group session the other day, and you went to the person running it and saying, what's going on in your head while you do it? Like we always need the, I think who wouldn't always want that? My guess is too, if you circle back to Simon, if you got into the thing that you were most meant to talk about, he would dive into it a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what's next. Like we go to the same person.
I don't know either.
I want to go again, and I want to mix it up with someone else next time. I want to experience if someone can make me go deeper or clearer or whatever. Although I'm guessing that how we experienced the first one is how we will always see it. We're going to be cloudy.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess we'd have to say and do it again.
Totally.
So do you want to share a little bit about yours? Because yours was very different and had a different approach.
So mine is like talking about being hazy. It was 1.5 years ago. Okay. So for abstract thoughts like you had, it really is what stuck afterwards. Because it was 1.5 years later. But I had, as you said, regression therapy, and it was gifted to me on my birthday. So her approach was very different. So whereas you were kind of going in saying, just anything that pops up and / life purpose kind of stuff, she very specifically said, you were gifted this for your birthday. So my intention is to bring you to a life where you had the most gifts you could bring forward to this one.
Oh, I like that.
Which I thought, oh, how cool. So this is a curious thing. So like yours, as you know, complete baseline is I had the very similar experience. I thought it'd be clear like a movie, and it was very cloudy. You're way more aware in hypnosis than you ever expect to be. I thought you'd feel like you like smoke pot, like a little bit high,
even more so than in like meditation.
Exactly.
I feel like I get deeper in meditation than I got in hypnosis.
1,000,000,000%. We find ourselves in moments of meditation where like I actually feel like a little bit trippy, if you will, or like definitely otherworldly.
Right, or like in like a different plane where like you're almost asleep but you're awake.
No,
whereas this I felt like wide awake.
No, so it was very cloudy. I was way more aware than I guess I wanted to be, but maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But what's funny is your experience validated mine more for some reason, because we both had the cloudy vision. The visual was physically cloudy. And we said when we talked right after, and this has resonated with me, that in a dream or a memory, it's clear. It's clear like a photograph. So something about the haziness of it actually makes it more real to me after you experienced it too. I know that's bizarre, but does that make sense?
No, it does.
But we further clarified that our memory and dreams are clear as day. They're like movies.
Right.
So it's a different place in your brain or psyche or something, and it is indeed cloudy. So it took me a really long time to be relaxed in this. And it actually frustrated me. My experience was we didn't have a lot of the research behind our belt. So this was really going in with
just for fun, yeah.
Fun, yeah. And like, I guess my expectations were pretty like movie style.
Pretty high, yeah. Pretty high expectations of what's going to happen.
So it felt like less obvious. And definitely there's a tone of feeling like you're making it up. But I had been prompted like you that whatever comes to your brain is the real thing. So at some point, I guess I released enough that I knew in flashes there were visuals and they were cloudy. And mine, without getting crazy into it, there's one where I was at a river and I knew, and like, this is so bizarre, but I knew so specifically I was there for a ceremony and it had to do with the tides being exactly where they needed to be. The moon had to be in the sky at a certain time. The stars were in a certain alignment. And there was something about this water cupping in my hands at a river in a very warm tropical location.
Yeah.
And I knew there was an alignment that made me feel magical in this moment.
That's cool.
And so very specifically, I knew that this moment was really important. And then it transitioned that it was very loving and beautiful ceremony. And I was with people that loved me very much. And I was the one running the ceremony.
That's cool.
And the after, like when we processed later, it might have been that I was a high priestess, the things I was explaining. And for me, I knew in that moment, and this is really weird because this isn't how I feel in life. In that moment, I felt really one with Earth, Mother Gaia, which wasn't a term I even knew then. I was very one with the ground and the earth and also the angels, the sky, and spiritual. And I felt the connection from like root to crown that I was connected in earth and sky.
Oh, wow.
And it was like so potent that I have the goosebumps telling you, which is so weird a year and a half later. Then another life or the same life, but a different scene.
Claire.
I'm inside a temple of sorts, again, tropical warm. It's always warm.
Yeah.
And there's another ceremony. And again, I know that I'm running the ceremony and when I say run, I'm not a power person. It's very loving. It's beautiful. It's spiritual, which as you know, I'm not really that in this life. I'm not religious. I'm not whatever. And religion isn't the right word for it, but there's a temple and there's stone, and carved in the stone in front of me is a version of hieroglyphics.
Oh, cool.
But I don't know that it's Egyptian. I told her out loud I thought it was Egypt. Strangely, her processing of it, later she told me, I don't think that was Egypt. She said, I thought it was Lemuria, which I'll get to later. But while I'm inside of it, I know it to relate a little bit to Egypt, but it also looks like it could be Mayan. It's a temple that I can't recognize.
Okay. Wow.
The symbols, I remember this, are more animal oriented than when I looked into hieroglyphics later. They're very tropical signs and they're very bird more than anything oriented. Anyway, I also see a vision of the fact that I have to do with the irrigation of water that's coming through the temple in a spout, coming into water, and there's a water source in front of me in the temple, and I know that I have something to do with getting the water into where we're going.
That sounds very clear, by the way.
It's very specific. So it's clear in the way I'm saying and knowing that this is my experience, but I wasn't seeing it visually.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does, because that happened to me. Like, there was, like, at one point when I was in that, I don't know if I shared this right, when I was in that little house in the prairie example, and he was like, oh, do you recognize anyone from here? Like, are any of your kids the same kids? And I didn't feel it, but I heard the name, like, I told you, Fiona. Like, and it was like, it was like someone just said it, and it was instant, even though I didn't feel it at all. So maybe that's, like, where you're, like, saying it like you knew, so it does come in different ways.
It totally does. It was, like, a knowing visual versus me seeing it.
Yeah.
But then while I'm telling you it, I actually think that I had a very specific visual. So the wall with the symbols was very visual to me. The water spout, the way it comes out, I could see it like an actual photograph. So maybe I'm wrong. And I've never seen an image that matches it. And then this other weird thing was I kept seeing a carriage that people hold with 4 staffs. And at the end of the staffs is like a toucan-like bird at the end of each one in their breasts.
Oh, cool.
And it's like a carriage like that someone like would be carried on. I'm not carried on it. No one's carried on it, but there was something significant. This is stuck in my brain forever to the point where I've Googled it. I'm like, what the frig is this? So anyway, there's more details on those 2 that I don't remember as much, but I would say that there was a couple of different places. They were definitely ancient. And one of them was just like so loving, amazing, like the water, amazing one. And then this other one, and they feel a little bit different, but very similar vibes where I had something to do with like high priestess stuff. And then the today one was, I landed in the kitchen of my grandma and grandpa, who I never met. They both passed away before I were born. And like, I saw the kitchen and I saw the love story between my grandma and grandpa as a witness. And I was like at a kitchen table in the kitchen that I've never seen in my life, but I saw it then. And I saw that like 1950s kitchen, and I saw like a cute exchange between my grandma and grandpa, again, who I've never met. And what my moment that I was seeing was how much they actually loved each other, like this crazy, darling love story. And what's curious outside of that is what I've learned is my grandfather wasn't an easy man and wasn't the best father supportive-wise. And so when I told this to my dad later, it really surprised him. So it's curious because, again, when we talk about what we might imagine, that's not the story I've been told.
Right.
But what was strange is the practitioner took me out of that one real quick. Like, that wasn't what was on her agenda, I think. So I popped out of that. And
were you able to verify any of like the kitchen details to your dad?
I wasn't. I was never able to really verify anything, to be honest.
Yeah, you can't. So I like, though, her approach of gifts. And happiness, like, I mean, like night and day, mine and yours. Oh my God, you're like a high priestess, like love and meditation. I'm like,
however, mine went ancient, and she directed it to where I had the biggest gifts.
That's cool.
And I'll say, like, just sifting through the ego and the crap and the maybe making things up and the not, what stuck with me was a really beautiful gift that I kept with me in future meditations and in my life. What I ultimately ended up needing to focus on, I really honed into the two lives where I was connected to earth and spirituality. And that was why I was revealed those things. That resonates so much that I've been in meditations where I remember how I felt cupping the water and being one with the heavens and the earth, for the lack of a better term. And it stuck with me. So she gave me a gift. Now, the funny thing is where the ego process is, like I said, we laughed, and I actually was kind of like upset at my regression because I got nothing that I could validate, and I heard I might be from another planet.
Yeah.
But no matter what, my seed of truth really was like being a part of both. Like, you need to be here and one with what you're experiencing spiritually. And that's something where it's very easy to be one or the other and not both. If there was a life where I really lived that, what a gift it would be.
Well, I feel like that's a good reminder now, because we're even working on that, we're like, because of the spirituality, and we're trying to get closer, and we're always looking for signs, and we're trying, all this, we want the universe, that we forget that we need to be in our bodies, and we need to be grounded in order to get the messages. Like, we are in these bodies for a reason, these vessels, and we have to have our souls in every element of our body in order to receive. And
and this is something you and I have experienced, where if you understand chakras, like the bottom few are related to like grounding earth and being present in your body. And then the upper ones have to do with spirituality, connecting to your inner self, blah, blah, blah. You and I have always had it very easy. The spiritual connection, like, I could feel the woo woo, we could feel it. And we actually are looking for ways to ground.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're connected in both places is so cool. But to bring it back to anyone listening, this is kind of my final wonder is, having both done it, what would your advice be to someone who's going to do it? I mean, the number one that I would say is release expectations and be open. But what else could we say to guide anyone who would want to do it right now?
I mean, I think the release expectations is so good. I also think maybe have an understanding going in, like, are you trying to get your life purpose? Are you trying to find gifts? Are you trying to cure something? Are you trying to like overcome a trauma? Like, I think having that is helpful. Like, I think just like if you have a want, because I do think in different ways, we both got messages that help us today and that we needed without really even knowing that's what we're going in for. So I think that's helpful if you're like, hey,
I agree. I think you're right. You had a reason, and it was like, what's this life about, right? What do I overcome?
Yeah.
And you got that answer. And then mine, not by choice, but I loved it, was, where were your gifts?
Right.
And like, you and I both utilized the knowledge from that. So that's big. I'd also say right afterwards, and I should have honored this advice for you. I journaled right after and got more nuggets that was coming through at the point. So I'd say plan for time alone to journal and process, I think. Then make a date with your best friend who you could talk to this stuff about. But I think journaling, like, more came out. I couldn't find my journal before today, and I wanted to because I remember there were actual visuals and cool stuff. So journal afterwards. And also let yourself have multiple reactions. You guys literally got to listen to how this went down for you. You were skeptical, confused, in a haze afterwards. Yeah. And a few days later, it's really resonating and couldn't be more
I've definitely become more of a believer now than I was originally.
Right. Try it, guys, and tell us your stories.
Let us know what you think.
And we're going to report back on your stories. So that's it. We were pretty darn weird by sharing this. Our freak flags are flying high today. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. We've loved being your spiritual travel guides and hope this made you feel more connected. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Your reviews help us create the guide that you are looking for. We'd also love to hear your stories.
You can follow and share your experiences with us on Instagram at So Guided Podcast. Your story might just be our next weekly woo-woo. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the universe. And remember, stay curious, ask the questions. You are so guided.